Well, Ty, we're kind of just looking at things to visit about with Steve and us, so we'll start off with what was your idea even coming to Idaho, and what have you got out of your trip? Good, bad, and different, I guess.
Well, Martin, I've watched you, for a long time through, magazines and articles and different things like that, and I feel that you have a ton to offer to the world on the horse's point of view, and just kind of a lot of things. And it ain't just the horse. I think there's a lot of things about cowboy skills, stockman skills, horseman skills that I wanted to come and get to know you better, and you invited me was one thing, and I felt real honored to get that invitation, and felt like it was something that I didn't want to pass over, because I feel like that, especially with horses, I feel like I just feel like you can spend the rest of your life getting better, and that that's what I want to do is really kind of with everything about being a cowboy that I'm interested in. I want to continually try to get better.
Well, I've enjoyed having you. I do a lot of clinics with a lot of basically amateurs. I mean, they're the ones that need the most help, and they're the ones that come to the majority of my clinics. I enjoy getting people to my clinics, not that they're all amateurs, but I enjoy getting people that have a higher level of riding and a higher level of riding ability, and obviously you have a higher level of riding ability, from your rodeo years and confidence in riding young horses and colts, and so that kind of sets you on a different plane than a lot of people I get to get around in my professional field now. When I was younger, I got around a lot of mentors, but they're all pretty much dead now, and so I got to surround myself with people that can kind of bring something to the table for me. And I've enjoyed a lot of our conversations the last few days since you've been here, and you got a lot of experience and intelligence in a lot of areas in the business world and everything else, and that's interesting to me, and I know you've put a lot of thought into the horse-minded stuff, and that's been good.
It's another thing that's real interesting to me is the Great Basin tradition. Anywhere you go in the country, cowboying is different, and really it's anywhere you go. Louisiana is way different than Texas. Texas is way different than New Mexico. New Mexico is way different than California, and so on and so forth. Colorado. I mean, really any state you go to, and even in a lot of places, the different regions of a state is different. And I've been lucky throughout my life, because of rodeo, getting to travel so much, that I've gotten to go and experience a lot of different ways of doing things, and the country a lot of times will kind of dictate how you do things, and I feel very lucky to be able to expose myself to those different things, because I feel like you can just pick up things here and there from being able to be around all that different kinds of ways of doing things that is fun and interesting, and sometimes you stumble on things that say, well, that would work better where I'm at as well. And so it's been a lot of fun, getting to spend this week with you, and you showing me a lot of things from the Great Basin tradition, I guess, as you call it, and it's a lot different than what we do there, what we do in Texas, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of. And especially the way you guys approach it, or what little I've done with you is you know, the horse is not just like a tractor or a tool that we're just banging it out of him to go get a job done. And then like working calves is a fun family affair that's low stress and low key, and it's made for everyone involved to have a good time and to make your horses better and to make yourself better and to practice your hero shots in the Brandon pen, and that's something that I think is great. Of course, I always enjoy somebody else's Brandon a lot more than I ever enjoy my own. So, and that's been fun, and I appreciate how open you've been with me and sharing ideas. And it's always fun whenever you're able to get around somebody that you have a lot in common with as far as the way you look at things and the way you look at the world. And I think that both you and I, the why is really important to us, and remembering the what. I think our minds work a lot the same in that way.
Well, I think one common denominator that we both have is we like to be surrounded by smarter people in the room. You know, if you're the smartest one in the room, you're not going to learn as much as if you don't surround yourself with other people. And it might be. I mean, I'm not an expert in your field, you know, of rodeo and the things you've moved on to in your business life and whatnot. But you've worked hard and put a lot of thought into it. You know, and I've worked hard and put a lot of thought into the things that I do. And I think we share that, you know, in common. And so it makes it interesting just because we're like-minded, even though we might not be exactly on the same track. We're like-minded in the sense of we want to learn and we learn in the same way. You know, we're not maybe not studying books and doing things like that, but exposing ourselves and making ourselves kind of vulnerable, so to speak, and around other people. You got to show them, you know, our ignorance in certain areas, and we want to get better at it. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to expose themselves, and they want to be the smartest one in the room, and that's all right, you know. But that's not for me. I'd like to grow. I think that's something I admire about you. Is you know, we're still young, but we want to grow. we want to learn. And a lot of people they put about so much effort into learning, and then they want to tell everybody else how much they know. But I don't think you can ever quit being a student, especially when it comes to horses. You know, they always got something to offer you.
You know, I got to read your book, you and Steve's book, Evidence-Based Horsemanship, and that was something that I felt was really powerful. I think it's really important for the horse, and more than that, you know, I think maybe not more than that, but I think it's every bit as important to the horse lover or owner or person, you know, horse person. And, you know, as I told you, I reading that book, the whole time I was reading it, I felt like this ought to be a prerequisite for horse ownership. And, you know, there's a million ways to skin a cat, and there's a million ways, there's probably quite a bit more than a million ways to ride a horse, what you do with a horse, what part of a horse interests you. Yeah, I guess everybody provides a feel to a horse. There's a trillion different feels that the horses can get. But what stuck out to me about the evidence-based stuff is it's not kind of just saying, well, this is so-and-so's philosophy. And really, I don't prescribe to a training, you know, I don't even know what the word would be, like a regime or a training. You know, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And I think that's what really interests, you know, I think I'm at the place right now where what's fun to me with horses is experimentation. Mm-hmm. Of the concepts that I know and just making up stuff. And I like trying to push the boundaries a little bit of things that I've never seen done, that you know, I might just have pop into my head. Like one day, not too long ago, I was starting a colt, and he was pretty fractious, and I wanted to put some driving lines on him. And I put a bareback pad on him, and as I was going over there to snap the driving lines on him, I don't even know what made me come up with it, but I just snapped him to the D-rings. And I drove him by guiding his hips instead of by guiding his head. And, you know, that's another one of those things that it's all the same to the horse. And it kind of expands. I feel like when I'm able to do things like that, it expands my mind, and it opens up possibilities that before, if you're just going through the motions and just doing the same thing that your dad did and granddad did and just doing that, I feel like that doesn't expand your mind and the possibilities as much. And so that's another reason I like to try to get around people that I have a respect for, is because, I just feel like there's always just so many things that you can take away that's going to help your deal and your situation and what it is that interests you about horses.
This has been a good week of being together, because I heard Martin and Ty talking and saying, well, I can kind of tell in seconds whether somebody really understands a horse or knows what's going on with the horse. And for me, I can tell pretty early whether somebody understands the nervous system of a horse. And, it's been very interesting, because one of the things that Ty has in common with Martin is he's a critical thinker. He demands evidence. You can't just get off with saying something. He's going to come right back and say, yeah, why? Where did you come up with that? What made you think that? What are the examples? Et cetera, et cetera. So basically, he's a good scientist. And what good scientists do is they just don't look at the world and say, this is the way the world is. They know that a lot of that's just based on perception. And, I watched a film that Ty's in the process of making, and if you put a ceiling on what you could do with a horse, it would be just one more film that everybody's seen about a horse. But he says, I'm going to let the horse tell me where that ceiling is, and I'm going to work with this horse's nervous system and see where we can go. So I'd encourage you, if you get a chance, to see his film. It's going to be in a film festival. But I think that whole attitude of, it would be very easy for either one of these guys to just rest on their laurels, sit back and say, this is the way it is. And I'm always impressed by all the questions, and they're insatiable learners, and it's exciting kind of being in that environment. So this week has been a heady kind of week, but with lots of applied stuff and a lot of experimentation and a lot of learning. So it's been a good place to be.
Well, so one thing that really, I don't know if you'd call it your legacy, but I'd like to, and I think this is where we kind of line up too, is there's this idea that, well, I've had people, when I come to start their colts, when I used to contract colt start, and they'd be, world champion cutters or world champion reiners or whatever. And they say, we like what you do with these colts, but when you leave, we'll put them on our program. And they couldn't make that connection. And, I like to talk with people today, especially with these virtual clinics, that are kind of like-minded in the sense that I would like to start every horse off, even at the halter breaking stage, like they're going to be my next world champion. Even though I know they might just be a ranch horse, or maybe they're going to be a rodeo horse or a race horse or a cutting horse. It doesn't matter. They all need to lead well. They all need to be able to, stand the saddle and get on and ride off quiet. Maybe lope them off and be able to turn right and left. They all should have that. I don't care what their future career is going to be. And, when I was doing a lot of colt starting, that was my deal. The first 10 rides, they're all the same class. Now, after 10 rides, maybe to 30 rides, we'd start, getting these other horses to stop and back up a little better, but not the race horses. They didn't have to stop and back up. You didn't want them to stop and back it up too good, because them fellas with size 3 hats couldn't ride them. So you got to be kind of careful how much you do of certain areas for certain things, you know. But of course, you know, my horses, I like to keep them really soft and really sensitive and everything. But if they're gonna go home to somebody that doesn't ride that well, some trail rider, some rancher, or something that doesn't need a sensitive horse, and a sensitive horse to get him in trouble, you better not develop that too much, or you better, you know, kind of get them to where they can tolerate a lot more pressure and stuff. But what I don't like to see is the bad horsemanship that's from the so-called high-level riders. A world champion, doesn't matter what it is, you know, what industry we're talking about, the cutting or rodeo or whatever. To me, I mean, I know ropers, I know cutters, I know, you know, to the whatever level that I've got my horses, you know, they can, and I'm not comparing myself to the good hands, but I know from my own experience and my observation of certain people, them horses can go in the box and be good-minded, not have to be bothered. They can go to a cut and I mean, be competitive. You know, they can go win. It's not just, you know, once in a while, but they can go to every level. You know, I've seen horses that, you know, win millions of dollars in the racing industry that you know, that I started. I'm not taking credit for doing it. I'm just saying that I know where them horses started and I know where they went. And you know, I've had people say, I can't believe that them horses, they look like ranch horses, and they're talking about these race horses. You know, I mean, they have them ponying with other horses just so all the people don't get nervous. But they don't need a horse to pony them out there on the track. They ride them horses just like they're going to the back pasture. But they got to do it for the other people to have somebody pony them out there and have outriders and everything. But it ain't for the horse. And so anyway, there's just a big gap there, and there's a few hands around the country that, you know, I think line up with me that have got world titles and in different events that are kind of helping to close that gap. You know, it's not the warm and fuzzy colt starters and the desensitizing and imprinting them when they're babies and then trying to make champions out of them. They can keep that feel all the way through, and they can be world champions, or they can just be a nice horse for the wife or kids to ride.
Yeah, you know, I would like to see it seems like with horsemanship, from my experience, it's like the game of Chinese telephone. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like where you whisper a secret in a room of people that's lined up, and you whisper it to the next guy, and they're supposed to pass it on down, and what comes out at the end doesn't even resemble what you first said. And I feel like some of that happens with horsemanship. I felt like that happened to me. I felt like bad information. I feel like, who knows if it was ever right, but if it was ever right, it kept getting skewed with each generation that it kept dropping down, and it might have been kind of a resemblance of the idea, but it had morphed into something that wasn't the idea anymore, that from the horse's perspective didn't make any sense. And so, you know, up till, you know, the first 20 years of my life, I was doing things that didn't work, that was mind-numbing repetition, and I had horses that didn't like me, they didn't trust me, they were hard to catch. I could make the monkey trick come out okay if it was roping a calf or team roping or barrel racing or whatever it was I was doing. But it wasn't until Dennis Reist helped me open my mind to the idea of communicating with a horse instead of going and just practicing whatever your end game or whatever your interest in horses is. And so with that philosophy, what is special to me and what stands out to me and what has really changed my life with horses was developing a communication system where you could start to talk really fluidly with each other in a very subtle way, with a nice steady stream of subtle information that the horse doesn't have to guess, and he doesn't have to fill in blanks. And even on the parts that the horse is doing that part of the job for you, he still has an understanding of what you're doing. And so, ideally, to be able to, the first time you want to go up and rope something, they do it perfectly just because of understanding. They don't know that they're going to go rope the cow, but they have an understanding of everything that it takes to go rope the cow. And so that's where it changed my life, because if you're looking at repetition training, or what I call trick training, is where you're just focused on this one thing that you want to do with horses, and you just drill them and drill them and drill them and drill them. That's all fine, and you can get the trick down pretty good, and you can be great at it, really. But that's really kind of all you got. It's kind of like sacking a horse out the way that I used to. You just shake the bag of cans until he's finally so mind numbed with it that he wasn't afraid of it anymore, and then you think you really accomplished something, but you didn't. And you just, as you call it, it's almost like learned helplessness, to where, and I didn't understand that when I was little. When I was little, we'd shake them cans, and pretty soon, at first they were scared to death, and pretty soon they wasn't, and I thought, wow, that works good. And it wasn't until time went on that I started to see that wasn't. And that's just one small example of, whenever you're thinking about trick training, repetition training, you can't prepare the horse for life with that one trick. If you want to go outside, that's when you see their head up and they're sweating and they're jigging and they're nervous and they're wondering where, and whenever you start to have somebody, there's so much information out there now with guys like Martin and all the guys that are out there doing these great things with horsemanship. There's so much information out there, and in this day and age, it's so easy to get. I feel so lucky that I'm living in a time that I can go get it, because as a kid growing up, you ride with a bunch of old crusty cowboys that don't tell you nothing.
It's not that shaking the sack of cans is all bad or all wrong, and a lot of things that people do, it's not that that's all wrong or all bad, but if it's what do they have that goes with it, and a lot of people see them. We'll just use that kind of as an analogy. They shake the cans and they see some progress, like you mentioned, and they walk away and think, well, that's all I got to do. Well, that might not be all bad, but you got to have something else going with it. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of these clinics, they...
Like, what do you mean?
They take their hindquarters and take their head around, and they do things, and they leave the clinic thinking, oh, well, now we got something that'll save our life. You better have something else to go with it, because that's only good in certain areas and certain circumstances for certain things, but out in the real world, there's a lot of other things going to happen, especially if you're going to do something to get out of a walk. Mm-hmm. And that's what I see, what I'm looking at is, that's okay for this, but we can't always stay here. The horse might take flight, and if we don't have something else going with it, or I might kick him up in a lope to get ahead of a cow or something, or to go rope something, or for whatever. There's got to be other things that you put with it. So just like you mentioned, he might not know you're going to rope that cow, but he's not scared because you got him prepared. He's got all the things in place that he's ready to go rope a cow, even though he doesn't know what that even means. And that's what I mean, is you got to have other stuff to go with it. You can guide him in a straight line, or you can guide him toward an obstacle, and a moving obstacle. And if you need to correct him left or right, those things are in place. You can regulate his speed. You don't just speed him up and there's no place to slow him back down. All that stuff has to be in place. And it's a lot of these people, like I say, and some have been to these clinics for years, for decades, and they're only getting little pieces, and that's all they're walking away from there from.
I think you have to take responsibility for what you get out of your horse, and it's almost like a garden. The way the brain would grow is like the way Ty's example. You could drill a horse, and they actually sort of check out after a while, like a third grader who has to sit through a 3-hour college lecture. They're just going to fidget, and they may be sitting straight ahead so they don't get spanked, but none of that information is registering. So in those tricks, they just dendritically in the brain, those axons just form one simple connection over another. And that works perfectly because you just have one highway to do that trick. But then where are you when you leave and you go for a trail ride or you go riding out somewhere else? That's all you've got. And the horse has no brain information, brain capability of dealing with the world around them. But if you use an internal locus of control where the horse has some say-so and you set it up so that they are searching for the answers, we know that brain dendrites then grow like this. You know, they branch out and they touch, and then they touch over here. So your horse is actually, even in situations where they come into something that's unfamiliar to them, if you have enough branches, you can sort things through without there just being an emotional overload. Because when there's an emotional overload, they're just a victim of their neurochemicals. You haven't set them up, so they're a victim of their neurochemicals, and they default to fight or flight. Then we punish them for that, and we get even worse. And now they're way up there sympathetically. So I hope that the role science will play is just in understanding how brains grow. And I think hopefully people will say, you know, I could have the smartest horse ever if I just set this up, or I can have one dumb horse who's dumbed down, who's checked out, who actually looks good doing that one thing, but that one thing only. And then we have to think about, I think, wellness and well-being for your horse. Is that important to you? You know, you can, if this is a pyramid and you want to make it optimum for your horse, you want to maybe win your competitions, but you want them internally, you want their immune system intact, you want them robust so that they can handle anything around them. So wellness and well-being then becomes an important issue to you. And I'm hoping more and more people find that to be a benefit.
Stephen, I think it even goes quite a bit deeper than that. You know, I think sometimes horsemanship gets maybe a bad rap or pigeonholed as a thing. As sometimes it feels to me like people look at it like you have all these different events, or whatever you want to call them, things that you do with a horse. And so there might be reining or cutting or rodeo or horse racing and then horsemanship, and that just seems crazy to me because I think sometimes
When you say horsemanship, you're referring to these horsemanship clinics?
Yeah, or like, yeah, you know, like people think of it, a horsemanship clinic is almost another thing that you go do.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
Another discipline.
yeah, and so, you know, it feels to me like people are like, well, oh yeah, well that's all fine and good, but I don't want to just, you know, feed fluffy cookies and you know, I want to go and, you know, turn a cow on the fence or something like that. And for me, it feels like a totally different picture. I feel like that you can definitely take all this good information that's out there about horses and things that make sense to horses, and you can add it to your whatever your competitive thing is, and I guarantee you, if you apply yourself and work at it and study it and practice and work your butt off, you can take this information that's out there, and I guarantee you, you're going to be a better competitor with a horse that is going to work better in a lot of different areas just because of the anxiety that you're going to reduce. And so when you see something that is just operating them like a tractor where you're just getting the result, for one thing, you're probably getting in their way. You know, possibly. I've done it, you know, and you're getting them off balance, and they feel like they can't win because you're going, you know, a lot of times, like me, I'd run out there and rope a calf, and all I knew was my horse needed to stop hard, and I thought the reins were brakes, so I'd stomp the brakes hard. Well, take out, if you want to argue if that's going to help the horse stop better or worse, take that part out of it, which I know, you know, I've proven to myself that a horse is going to stop better if you let him stop and get out of his way and quit pulling on him and pulling him out of balance and pulling him out of shape to stop. But whether you agree with that or not, if you can not drop that hammer on him when he's already trying to stop as hard as he can, you got to think of all the ancillary benefits you're going to get of taking that anxiety away. Now he's going to stand in the box better. He's going to score better. He's going to run freer. And especially if he's getting good information of exactly when you want him to stop, instead of just, I want you to run as hard as you can, and bang, now I want you to stop. That's not good information. And for him, that's a hammer that's going to drop, and he doesn't know exactly when, and he doesn't know exactly why. And so, I feel like I know in my heart and soul that I hope that people start to embrace the idea of gaining better horsemanship and understanding. Again, this is where that book's really powerful, because we're talking about proof. We're talking about science. We're not talking about what Ty's idea of what he thinks is, and when those things can be proven like that, why wouldn't you jump on that and reap the benefits that you're going to get from that, no matter what thing it is that you like about a horse? If you just like trail riding, and you're tired of, oh, it's a windy day, my horse is basket case day because the wind's blowing, or oh, the motorcycle came by and my horse doesn't like motorcycles. You can either keep living that life, which I've done, and wonder why this guy over here, I want to know what the breeding is on that horse because he's good. Mine's bad and yours is good. And that horse is just getting a better information that's putting his mind in a better place, and he has a better understanding. And so, I know that everybody doesn't want to put in the work and the time and effort that it's going to take to be an amazing high-level horseman, but I see a lot of mainstream practices that are failing at the most basic horse handling skills, like leading a horse. I had a barrel racer come to me one time that was like, why is this horse, why do I have so much trouble? I said, well, and she was asking me for my help. I said, well, let me see you walk him in a 50-foot circle. And she couldn't. He's jigging and prancing and trotting and speeding up and wanting to lope and in and out and falling in and out, slinging his head. And I said, the only thing easier than walking in a 50-foot circle that I know is just stand there. Well, he wouldn't stand there. He's jigging and nervous, and where's my buddies? And he's just a trapped victim. And I'm like, well, you can't, if you can't do the two most basic things with a horse, you can't do kindergarten, but you're wanting to do master's degree college stuff on this horse, and that that is a place where having an understanding of why this horse is doing that is going to help you tremendously. And then that way you're not drilling that monkey trick 4,000 times and then still blowing it on the weekend when you go to the event. It's not bad luck. It's bad information. It's bad preparation that makes sense to the human but not to the horse.
That goes back to what I say about what you do halter breaking that horse, or your first rides, any of the first impressions. The first impressions are so important because you only have one chance to make a first impression. And if it's a good first impression and it's progressive and whatnot, you don't have to have this conversation a second time. And that's what I think is important. And to take that right on through, like you said, for this barrel racing girl or whatever, they should have a positive experience and a learning experience is what I'm saying, and in the right direction is what I mean by positive. A lot of people might take positive and feeding them a cookie and making them love you as a positive, but that's not a learning experience. That might be a bonding experience, but that's not a learning experience. And to me, if you offer them a good learning experience, there's no reason why you don't get the bonding experience there with it, because you're not doing anything negative to them. It's the old bash them around with the big hammer approach that gets us in trouble with the bonding experience. But again, it goes back to it doesn't matter what discipline we're talking about. When people talk about horsemanship clinics, well, You know, I don't do anything different with the race horses when I started them than the cutting horses and whatnot. They all need that same foundation. They all need that introduction to, you know, the saddle, introduction to us, introduction to the halter. And if that goes well and it's a positive experience for them, they come out with a better response and better relationship with the person. You know, to me, they're on their way to go do any discipline.
Yeah, I think that is. I think that's spot on of talking about trying to look at horses the way they see the world, and developing a line of communications that works with the way that they see the world, instead of drilling something into them the way things make sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and doctors use words like anthropomorphization, but that's you know, those anthropomorphizing a horse, you know, putting human traits onto a horse, and confinement are two of the things that I see so many people, including myself, that's the root. Those two things are a lot of times the root of your horse problems.
Mm-hmm.
We know scientifically that the most stressful situations for horses are constraint and restraint and isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we set up environments where they're isolated and we restrain them.
In a lot of different ways.
Isolation without that. If you take the others away, they're going to go to the herd.
It would be laughable if you thought about it the other way around. Let's say horses are in charge of taking care of humans. Well, you know, that idiot couldn't even see what was behind him, like 85 degrees, right? And man, don't cut those vibrissae, those feelers on his face. We'd all go around like Rip Van Winkle, right? They'd pull our shoes and we'd be walking around ouching and stuff. And it's laughable when we think about it that way. But we think horses have human brains, so they should be able to learn it today when I want it and give it to me on demand in any situation. So sometimes our idea of what the capacity or capability of the horse is way up here, and we haven't helped them to get up there. And then sometimes even the capability of the rider is way down here, and they don't even recognize that that gap is huge, and they blame the horse because they're not up here and the horse isn't up there either.
Yeah, so when we don't let the horse be a horse that we start having troubles. We can take them from their environment and put them in our environment, whether it be in the arena or the racetrack or whatever we're doing. But we got to be careful how we make that transition. If you make a good transition, this goes back to what I'm talking about. If they have a good foundation and you make this good transition, you know, as you bring them along, they can go to top levels and perform willingly and you know, put their heart into it the best they can. But if you don't have that good transition, yeah, you might scare a percentage of them. 1 in 50 might make a champion horse in this person's barn. But you know, it's the other 49 that I look at. You know, I've raised my own horses. My family's raised, you know, horses for generations here, and you don't just take 1 in 50 of them, you know, to town to sell. What do you do with the other 49? No, they all need to do something. You know, I mean, you don't just take them out back and destroy the ones that the other 49. They all got to have a home somewhere. So yeah, you're gonna have the top end, you're gonna have the bottom end, but that bottom end can still go do a job. They can still be useful for somebody.
When you put in those problems early on, like making a first impression, that's how the brain works. You do something and axons fire, so here's a route. And then the next time you come back and do something, the chances are it's going to take the same path. And if you keep doing the same thing, then you're left. Now you're cementing a path, and it could be a bad path. So the idea is to get something good, leave it alone, let it go rewire. Like if it was a road, pave itself overnight or with some dwell, and then come back, and now you have that road that you built, that you know signals are going to go down. But if you've got the horse confused because you're not clear in your communication, you know, you've got dead ends and bad places, and maybe a super highway even built that the horse defaults to because you put it in there. So we talk about horses living in the now. To some degree, yeah, because they live wire. But the stuff, the highway that they have to use and work with, got laid in there before then. So sometimes your task is you got to go back and then rewire, because all this wiring is messed up. And you got to go back and create the good pathways. And that's more work than if you just started out right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I know scientifically that's right, but the thing that can help you if you're somebody that's trying to learn how to, maybe it's your first horse, or maybe you're trying to get better with horses or whatever. It's horsemanship is a crazy thing because it's really the only thing in the world that you learn and teach at the same time. And the beauty of horses is the amount of bad horsemanship and pain that they can tolerate, and that's not really the beauty, but the beauty is that as soon as they get a better deal, they'll sign up for it. And that's the saving grace, and that's something that really helped me along the way of trying to learn. Not saying that I have everything all figured out, but trying to learn, knowing that as soon as you get better, they're going to be right there waiting for you. And
They don't hold a grudge.
They don't hold a grudge. No, as soon as they got
hang on to fear, but they don't hold a grudge.
That's right. And so, you know, that's the thing that helped give me a, you know, helped give me some confidence that I just had to keep working. And because they would show me each time that I would start to get a little piece of the puzzle, they were just right there ready to sign up, you know. And so you might do it wrong 50 times, but as soon as you do it right, in his world, that it makes sense to him, he's like, well, yes, sir, that's easy enough. And so, you know, that's the thing that I think a lot of people need to keep in the back of their head, that it's okay to make mistakes. You know, you don't want to get frozen. You know, you don't want to go to a Martin Black clinic and then and see stuff that you think's amazing and then go, but I don't know how to do it, and I'm frozen and I don't know what to do and I need somebody to do it for me. You can start working towards it. Yeah. You know, and I think that the biggest thing, another thing that I see in horsemanship a lot of times is emulation. And emulation in horsemanship is a real dicey situation because there's a lot of little things that are happening that you're not seeing. And it's kind of can make the difference like night and day. So, you know, I would just encourage people to try to understand the why. Because, when, you know, and I think me and Martin both really operate this way, that when you understand the why, then it's easy to remember the what. But when you're trying to just emulate the what, there's too many little particles in there that make a big difference to the horse that you're not going to really see if you're just trying to emulate. So if you can just kind of task yourself with the things that you're going to do to a horse, why does this work? Why does this not work? And when you can start to familiarize with those things of why this thing works and why this one doesn't work, and that's, again, going back, that's what I love about evidence-based, is because there's not just a why that he said or he said or he said, but this is science. You know, this is a fact. And then you know, living in that real world, you can prove what's already there to yourself. And so it seems like if you...
Provable and repeatable.
Yeah.
I think we teach these horses like the mouse going through a maze, and they get the maze. They get the cheese at the end of the maze. They got that pattern. And if that's the only maze they go through and you put them in a different maze, it's worse than starting over because they have expectations of going around this corner. They don't even think about going past that corner, taking the corner going the other way or anything. And, you know, just about the time this horse starts to expect, starts to anticipate the maze is we're going to go this way and that way, that's when I start saying, okay, you're ready for the next maze. We're not going to forget this one. We're going to add to it, though. So now we're not just going to do this in a walk, we're going to do it in a trot. And we're not going to just go in a straight line, we're going to start deviating. We're just going to start going through different mazes. So pretty quick, they don't just get this pattern like we kind of brought up here earlier. They're feeling their way through it, and we can give them a little support. Yeah, look over here. Yeah, look over there. Yeah, go straight. Yeah, go faster. Yeah, go slower. But I don't wait for them to look to me to tell them everything to do either. I don't want a robot, but I want them to exercise their brains. And like, I got horses 20 years old. You're going to ride one here in a minute. He's over 20 years old, and I feel like he's as trainable at 20 as he was as far as showing him something new. Now, he's got a lot of experience, so in that sense, it's not like showing him his third maze, but he's just as open to find another maze, at 20 as he was his 10th maze or his 5th maze, even when he was younger. They stay open-minded, and I don't know how that works in the brain, but if you leave them on that pattern too long, okay, there's one maze they can get through, or maybe 5 mazes they can get through, but they can only go in the rope and box and turn around one way. You ask them to turn around the other way, it's like, no, you're not from around here. We don't do it like that. Well, why not? Maybe you wouldn't have so much trouble if you turned them one way one time, one way the next time. But that's how I look at reputation. It's good to a point. But again, it's what else do you put with it? If you don't put anything else with it, that's when we get in trouble, in my opinion.
And you have to set things up new to continue to widen that window, because the big dopamine hits are from novelty. When they learn something new, that adds, and the neurons they get are called association neurons. So you might have this thing that they do over here and this that they do over here, but association neuron, if they get reinforced for searching out answers, you'll get an association neuron that actually touches on both of those neurons. And before, they could maybe do this without linking it to that, but now their brain is much more, everything's more associated, more connected. Sometimes with horses, they get confused because you got little fragments of things floating around out there, and they can't figure it all out on their own. But the more time you give them to process information, the more they get connected, and then that becomes much more clear to them in their brain. They have more brain power.
Too much of that, I think, can be a bad thing. They got to be able to find relief at some point, not be confused all the time. That's the nervous horse. He doesn't know where the relief is, and he's just up here like a lot of these rodeo horses or whatever. They're just all jacked up and everything. But on the other hand, we got the warm and fuzzies that don't want their horse to get out of their comfort zone. To me, that confused horse, he's searching hard. And I use that a lot as a pressure. I don't need to spur him, I don't need to whip him. I can just kind of present things in a way that they're like going, how do I get out of this maze? Now that I got his attention, he's uncomfortable there. That's the pressure. Now, it doesn't have to be a physical pressure, it's a mental pressure. Now we can help him get on track to get out of this maze, and he finds the end of it. And, he's kind of given to his own pressure, you might say. It's not a physical pressure that I put against him. It's not a spur, it's not a whip, not yanking on his head or anything. All I got to do is get him to searching and then help him find it.
Right. When we talk about getting them sympathetically aroused, when we talk about them calming back down and coming back to homeostasis, their balance, we're not talking about staying at homeostasis, because all the research on learning would show you need some sympathetic arousal, a low degree of anxiety to motivate you to do the searching. If I told you guys, all right, here's each an 800-page book for this class, but we're not going to have a quiz on it, and it's just for your own edification, but I'd like you to read it for over the next 2 weeks. But if I tell you guys there's going to be a test on it, and your grade depends on it, and your graduation depends on reading that thing, there's enough anxiety there for you to want to pick that up and read it. And that doesn't mean because you have the anxiety that you're not going to gather the information. You may be more focused and paying more attention. So we know that's an element. The warm fuzzies that you talk about, where the horse is looking out the window and
Resentful,
yeah,
bored.
yeah, if you don't have them there, you're not going to learn either. You're not going to have the brain in a good neurochemical state to learn.
I feel like part of the human condition or human nature is, I think sometimes we get focused on whatever the task is and don't realize that all the part that mattered for the horse happened before the task. Here's the magic right here, and here's the thing that you're wanting to do, but all the magic for the horse happens before it. And when it's done right, they give it to you that first time, and you know you've got it for life. And when you're not concentrated on this part before it, and you just blast them to what feels like success to you, because you got them over the obstacle or got them blown through the task.
I think that's a predator trait in us as predators. We focus on the kill and not the hunt.
Yeah.
And if we break it down and strategize the hunt, then, and I think we're all scientists in this regard, it don't matter for the kill. We're not there for the kill. We're there for the hunt.
Yeah.
How can we get there? How many different roads is there to roam?
Yeah.
I know how to get to Rome. Like you said, we know how to get cowboy these horses into it. Yeah, we get her done, but that the hunt wasn't there, and the hunt's what I enjoy. That's how many different roads to Rome can we lay out here?
Yeah. And that's just that. That's the part that's so powerful, that when you realize that completing the task doesn't even have to happen. And I say that it's going to happen,
right?
But it doesn't even have to happen, because when you're looking at the part that happens before that matters to the horse, the discussion, the feel, the timing, that makes that horse, that can make it where that pressure that you guys are talking about, mental pressure or whatever, that's the thing that can help change his mind to go with your idea that sounded horrible to him 5 seconds ago. It felt like leaping to his death 5 minutes ago. And when you're able to understand this part that happens beforehand, that's where it's.
I think of it like this horse is searching. I got him up here. He's uncomfortable where he's at, and he says, "Well, what if I go this way? That door's blocked. What if I go that way? That door's blocked." And one thing I've learned is if they perceive the pressure as self-inflicting, they will not put pressure on themselves. So if you can present it that way, then they go, whoops, that's not an open road. That's not an open road. The road's closed that way. They keep looking, but they're taking all these notes. Okay, no need to try that one again because it's closed. No need trying that one again.
But the more, go ahead, sorry.
So, and when they finally do find it, it's like you didn't push that horse down that road. If anything, you go, and that's all it took.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. I think people in their own way, myself, I'm using this from my own experience. People in their own way, they understand how to say no, 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 no. But the important part is, obviously that you got to say, no, this door's closed. Yeah, no, this door's closed too. But the important part is presenting it in a way that you go, this door's wide open. Mm-hmm. And I call it leaving a breadcrumb trail. And so that's what I'm talking about. You can tell when they pick up that first breadcrumb that you're on your way and it's a done deal.
Well, if you spend 3 days saying no, they're going to get discouraged.
That's right.
And that's kind of it. You got to know their tolerance level. How much searching are they going to do? What I'm talking about is they're just kind of here and here and here and here. Oh, there it is. It might be a matter of seconds. If you're a bigger project, rope and steers or something, it might be several runs, but it's still just a matter of seconds that they're actually going to do this task, and then it's however many minutes till we come to that task again. But still, they have this anxiety, this pressure, this mental pressure, whatever you might call it, confusion, whatever you might call it. But you're only going to leave it there for so long, just like you're only going to lay your leg in there so long, and you better get some response, the correct response, or they're going to learn that that's just a part of life.
The fun part about horsemanship isn't all the no parts. The fun part about horsemanship is every day learning how to get better at showing them where the breadcrumb is, and you know, that's the part that intrigues me so much, and then it starts to become experimental, where you can just start making things up, and watching them, they can find their way through anything when it's presented right.
And then they start looking for those doors because they know the idea is to look through that door. But then when they find the door, you got to quit asking because then they don't think they found it.
Yeah, and that's the greed in the human that we got to realize about ourselves. You know, we get it. You might do it again, and maybe a third time. But if they give you the right answer once, maybe 3 times, you better not ask it, because then they think that something must be wrong because we're not getting the relief.
And when you get it good, you don't feel like you even have to do it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when you get it, that's going back to that part that I'm talking about that's before it. When you feel them find that breadcrumb trail, you know you don't have to do it again, because they're like, oh, there's one, and you watch it compound, and it's a done deal. You know, it's like the task that us humans are so inclined to be focused on becomes unimportant. You know, and that's where it just starts to get so fun that you just get hungrier for it.
Right through the wild desert wind, wide, coming round to my kin. Mustangs and Indians roamed wild and free, where outlaws would hide from the law when they flee in the wide.
Well, I've enjoyed it. You know, having the grandkids out to Stark Colts was pretty special, and you guys there to share ideas and conversation. It's been great for me.
You know, when I do television work, they tell me that I'm monotone and unenergetic. And I just really like being on TV with you because you make me look like a game show host.